Alright everyone, another 3 points for Celtic, 6 from 6 so far this season, 2-0 victory for us this afternoon at Easter Road. John is with me, back with me on the channel. Marks out of 10 for that, John, what do you reckon?
I'd give that a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I thought, again, we'll split it into different parts, won't we? But I thought the first 25 minutes, half an hour were excellent. And then once you're up to a 2-goal lead, you do kind of coast a bit. And in the second half, I've just listened to Brendan Rodgers there. He kind of said that in the second half they let the play get too direct and it stretched the game. They weren't quite making the connections that they were in that first half. I thought in that first half an hour, some of the passing, the quick passing, just one or two touch and the combinations, the players running off each other, finding space, I thought was all really good to watch and exciting to watch. So I was happy with that aspect of it. And then once you're 2-0 up, it was just very comfortable, wasn't it? It was very comfortable.
Yeah, looking at how we felt before the game, you kind of shouldn't be too surprised that's how the game panned out. But I was surprised because we don't really have... we haven't had many visits to Easter Road as comfortable as that in recent years. Even the ones I remember under Postecoglou where we won convincingly. I remember it being a little bit more of a test, Hibs having moments. Hibs offered nothing in that match. I know they had a couple of chances later on, the guy hit the bar, etc. But Kasper Schmeichel didn't have a save to make in that whole game.
I think even if you just look at last season, the first game was 0-0 at Easter Road, and then we needed that penalty in the last minute from Ida to win 2-1 in the second half of last season. But Hibs were a lot more combative in those games, in our faces a little bit more. I just thought, just from a Hibs perspective, I just thought they looked like they totally lacked belief just from the first whistle. I know we got a really early goal and that really stung them, but they just didn't seem to be a team. Almost, it was odd. It doesn't look good for them, I have to be frank. Again, it's still early stages in the season, but Celtic took full advantage because I thought Celtic came into the game with a lot of intent and a lot of desire to show that this can be a place that can win comfortably, which, as you say, hasn't really been that in recent seasons.
Because I thought, coming off the back of last weekend, and we would start really fast and. Actually, first couple of minutes, Hibs were the ones who were kind of pressing just a little bit, and I think we had a couple of passes out of play. And there was one moment when I think 3 or 4 Hibs players, hounded Callum McGregor and gave away a free kick, and Martin Boyle went to stand in front of the ball. And I was kind of thinking, right, they're up for this game. They're going to try and make it really difficult for us. The best thing that happened in the game for us was getting that early goal, because it just completely... It added to our already overflowing confidence, but it also really dented their fragile state of mind at the moment, Hibs. So I thought it was a great start to the game. First real attack we had. Kyogo should actually play it to Kuhn. And I was shouting at him, he has to play that, hits the shot. And I love the fact that both James Forrest and Nicholas Kuhn were alert to it. And it looks like a really simple goal, but it only comes because those guys haven't switched off. They're both so alert. And it's the kind of thing Kuhn needs to add to his game. You've got to score goals if you're going to be a top Celtic winger. That's what Jota did, Liel Abada did, other players before him. So I think that's promising.
Just on Nicholas Kuhn, he looks much improved from last season, obviously. I think the most impressive thing about him is his ability to find space off the ball. He's really good at running off defenders and exploiting that space. He did have a few moments today where he kind of dribbled into a couple of dead ends, but I prefer him trying that kind of stuff than not trying that kind of stuff, to be frank with you. Because like we were kind of saying on Thursday, I think we do need that kind of spark from the wing areas where people try something different. And I think Kuhn, if he gets more confidence, will start to be more successful at that. But he's just really good at on the counter attack just now. Really good at finding space from Kyogo, finding space from O'Reilly, from the other midfielders. So I'm heartened by how he's shaping up at the moment. And obviously, he was in the right place at the right time to score that goal.
Yeah, it was a strange game from him today because he did a lot of things really well, and he looks a lot better than last season. Even that run of 3 or 4 matches he had last season where he looked good, he looks just a totally different player. He looks far more confident to me. But there was a few moments, especially in the second half, where he was almost kind of overplaying at times, and I think if he can just get that kind of ruthless edge to his game, I've got massive hopes for Nicholas Kuhn. I mean, I think he could be a real find for us. And I genuinely, if you went back to the end of last season, I was kind of at the point almost of it already being last chance saloon for him, because I just felt as if he wasn't offering a great deal. He came on in the Scottish Cup final and he was just really, really poor. Certainly the breaks come at a really good time for him. He looks fresh. And as I say, I think he's going to have a really good season and be a big player for us.
I don't think anyone's benefited more from a full pre-season more than him. Like, he came back, he was part of the initial group that came back early. He was already looking strong. He said he was doing work in the off-season with personal trainers, etc. And he does look physically stronger to me. And he does look like ready to go. He looks a step ahead of the opposition, and that's what you want from a winger. So, yeah, hopes are high.
So we're kind of battering Hibs at that stage. I can't remember exactly at what point the Kyogo chance came. You know, the one where he opens up his foot and slides it wide. Was that a 1-0?
Yeah, that was at 1-0. And I think that's just it's more evidence of kind of what we're talking about, because the build up to that, I know Hibs were kind of made an error, but it felt like they were forced into that error because Celtic were so at them and so intent on pressing them and getting in their faces. It's just a real physicality about Celtic just now, which I think is pleasing, especially when the other team have the ball and are trying to pass it about. Celtic are just so up for getting right where the ball is, or trying to intercept, or just trying to force mistakes, and Kyogo's chance came from that. Unfortunately, never took it. Yeah,
he looks really lively, and he looked really lively early in the game. He was involved in the first goal. He missed his chance. He's more involved in games than last season at times. He was kind of quite isolated at times last season. I think in the 5 or 6 matches we've had so far this season, including the friendlies, I think he's been really involved in every game. He still can't get his goal away from home. I mean, is it not like a year now? Was it Tynecastle last year, the last time he scored away from home in the league? It's a mad stat.
He's another one who's had, I wouldn't say an attitude change. He just looked like he took the break seriously as a way to kind of reset what his situation was at Celtic. Now, he didn't do badly at Celtic last year. I think everyone's aware of that. You know, he scored almost 20 goals, but he wasn't quite what he was from the season prior, which everyone recognises well. He gave interesting comments to Japanese media about, you know, how he felt like he had to go through some stuff at Celtic last season. And he sounded like he was willing to now take responsibility for that and change the things that he can control. And Brendan Rodgers has kind of alluded to that as well, saying that he's come back with a real different attitude. He looks different in training, etc. So I think we're seeing that paying off now. Just on the Kyogo point though, I mean, like, this situation where we don't have another striker is getting a bit absurd for me, because, you know, he went through the wars a little bit in that second half, did he not? And
have you not heard of another striker? No, Mikey Johnson, I think his name is.
He went off as well, so God knows what we're down to now. So, I mean, Kyogo isn't injured. I don't think we need to be worried about that. But he had that shoulder. He was holding his shoulder at one point. He was holding his foot at one point. And I just think it's just an unnecessary risk we're taking at this point, where we don't have someone ready to come in for Kyogo, because if he gets injured through the week or his shoulder flares up during the week, which is a known issue, by the way, it wouldn't be bad luck if Kyogo's out with a shoulder issue and we don't have backup. That's a known issue that Celtic should be planning for. I think really I'm at the stage where if they can't get Ida done in the early stages of this week, and I'm, in the early stages of this week, then they really just need to move on and find another striker, because we need another striker in the goal and in the door, and I think that was evident again today. Because I even think without Kyogo picking up any knocks, the game was just crying out for a different attacking option in that second half. It had kind of deteriorated a little bit, it had gone a little bit flat, and it's the ideal type of situation where a player like Ida would come in and just kind of change the dynamic of how we were playing in attack. So I do think it's just so urgent, and I don't really understand what's going on there.
I do find it a little bit surprising that a number of weeks ago now we let Kuhn leave. Now I know O wasn't necessarily ever going to make it at Celtic. I quite liked him, I've said that, but I think generally we'd all agree Ida offered far more than O. But I find it strange that we allowed O to leave and have now gone probably 3 weeks more with one forward. It's a bit strange.
It is odd. I mean, we've talked extensively about it on Thursday, so we won't go over old ground, but things just need to happen, Hamish. That's as simple as that.
Ida will make his debut next week against Hibs. There you go.
Okay. Nice prediction. I like that.
I might edit that out if I regret it later on. Right, Callum McGregor. You kind of knew that well, you didn't know because he doesn't score often, but you maybe had a wee feeling after his big news and the other day that he might do something like that. Steve Clarke was there as well. Wonder what his reaction was. It's weird because McGregor's such a good footballer, but you kind of, well, I certainly maybe am guilty of forgetting how sweet a striker of the ball he is. See, when he first came to the club, he would score goals like that quite often. I remember a goal he scored against Ajax in a Europa League game that was a really good finish, and his first game for the club he scored, it was at Iceland. He scored a number of really good goals like that. The one at Midtjylland, remember the volley, unbelievable strike. But you kind of sometimes just forget how, as I say, how sweet a striker of the ball he is. And I just had a feeling when he ran onto that ball that it was going to go into the back of the net. I mean, it's a fantastic strike. It's going to be up there. Probably won't win goal of the season, but it's going to be in the wee compilation they do, I'm sure.
Again, lovely movement to just kind of drop into space, receive the ball, and then he's got all the time in the world to get a shot away. And when you've got that much time, I agree with you. You know, when he was building up to his shot, you're thinking this is going to be on target at least, and it was just an absolute stunner into that top corner. Beautiful. And I'm sure Steve Clarke's reaction to it was a dour face, because Steve Clarke's reaction to anything is a dour face. If Scotland won the World Cup, Steve Clarke would have a dour face, so I'm not sure it got much of a reaction from the stands. But, you know, fair play to him. It was good. It was nice for Callum McGregor to have that wee moment. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about him this week and that, and it's just nice for him to pop up with a highlight moment. And it's just what a goal. What a goal. He was buzzing to score it as well. And like you say, when we're up 2-0 at Easter Road, it was pretty easy from that point on, to be frank with you.
Yeah, Rodgers was buzzing for McGregor as well. The camera went to him and he was delighted. He should probably do that kind of thing more often. No, is that a fair comment? Because he's capable of it, but he doesn't score many goals, Callum McGregor.
I think he takes responsibility a lot of the time for retaining possession and making sure the ball's recycled, because he's often on that area of the pitch, but he usually has a lot more people in front of him, or is usually someone's much closer to him. And I just think he, like the rest of us, he just saw the space just open up wildly, and so he took a swing at it. But yeah, I think he's capable of doing that more often, and it would be great to see him have more of an impact in that final third, because as we know, he's played a much deeper role for us. He's been the connection between defence and midfield. But everyone knows he's got the capability of making an impact like that. And, you know, maybe down the line, if we sign a more defensive midfielder or someone who can sit in that role, we might see more of McGregor further forward. Easy for me to say. Yeah.
What about after that then? Because we were just loving it at that stage. I was about to batter a message into our group chat saying this has got 7-0 written all over it, because at that stage it genuinely did, because Hibs were all over the place. We were so confident. We'd already missed some chances. We'd already had 2 goals, and it just didn't really happen from there on. I mean, I think we still got into some really good areas at the start of the second half. The amount of shots from close range we had that were just either blocked by a Hibs player or just didn't quite come off. O'Reilly, Hatate, Kyogo. There was one move in the second half I've just remembered, when Hatate on the left hand side and he puts it in with his left foot to Kyogo, and it was a brilliant pass and brilliant football. So it's not as if we completely went off our game. We still played some good stuff. I think the last 20 minutes we did, to be fair. We didn't really do anything after 70 minutes, but if we'd have maybe got a third goal, possibly would open the floodgates a bit, but it just didn't really happen from 2-0.
No, and I think by that point Hibs had realised how dire they'd been, and maybe Gray had tried to get a message into them at half-time that basically it wasn't good enough. But again, if that's the best they can muster in response, then
I'd be worried by the way. I'm not saying they're going to get relegated, but they're if they play like that, they might get relegated.
Yeah, and again, I thought they were really bad, and I mean we'll see how it pans out for them, but. Yeah, you're right. It just went a little bit flat in that second half, didn't it? It just went a little bit flat with substitutions and new players coming to the game. Just things went just quite clicking in the same way. And like as Rodgers alluded to, it was just snatching at passes a little bit more, getting it forward a little bit too quickly, and then that just creates space for Hibs to then try and exploit in response. And they did get up a couple of times, but again, Schmeichel wasn't troubled at all. I don't think they had a shot on target all day, to to be honest.
He's not made a save yet, a save of note in either of our Premiership matches, and as much as you don't want opposition teams to be bombarding our goalkeeper with shots, I would quite like to him maybe had something to do in these games.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe why it was quite good to see him in pre-season in the USA, because obviously he did make a few belting saves over there. Yeah. I think the thing with Schmeichel I'm noticing is just he's very comfortable in ball. I know he had that slack pass in the second half, but that was really the only moment. And I just think he's far more comfortable in the ball than Joe Hart. And I think maybe his teammates are already more comfortable with him holding the ball. There was a moment in the second half where he kind of chipped it over the defender to Alistair Johnston, I think, on the right flank when he was under pressure. And
he let it almost go to his goal line, didn't he?
Yeah.
We were all getting a bit worried, but he was calm.
And I think if that was Joe Hart, he might have tried to play it long or maybe tried to play it a little bit flatter, but he just took a really nice option to just dink over. And I think that's the kind of range that Schmeichel has, and that's going to be something to watch. Like his distribution for me, I hope, is a real upgrade on what we saw last season, and hopefully that plays out over the coming games.
Yeah, it might make a difference at European level as well. We've really got that press, someone who's calm under pressure. I'm not going to we're not going to labour the point of the second half. We know that Celtic weren't great, but I guess we can forgive them. If you look at the start to the season, 2 games, 6 goals scored, none conceded, top of the league already. We've navigated Easter Road, which is normally quite a tough game. You know, Kelly went bad last season, so it's been a pretty solid start to the season.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously we struggled against Kelly last week. We struggled at Easter Road last season. We struggled against Kilmarnock last season, not last week. We struggled against Hibs at Easter Road last season, and I think the 2 performances have shown so far that there's not those same kind of going through the motions that we had last season so far. Obviously, it's very early stages in the season, but it's interesting to note that in fixtures that we might not have done so well in last season, we're definitely looking much improved. I think, as I said the other day, I think Rodgers is doing a great job on the players that he has, and hopefully we get the players that he needs. And I'm very pleased with the start of the season. No complaints, really. No major complaints in terms of what we're seeing on the pitch. And again, we've got Hibs again next week, and I just think we're probably going to go through into the quarterfinals of the League Cup, and we're suddenly picking up a bit of momentum. There's a derby coming up not too far away, and there's a lot to look forward to. A lot to look forward to with Celtic. A lot of work to be done, but a lot to look forward to. Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of 2 seasons ago when we had this strange thing at the start of the season of having no European qualifiers and just being Sunday or whatever for the first 6-7 weeks of the season. We really did pick up some momentum at that point. Remember, 9-0 Dundee United, 4-0 Rangers, etc. So I just wonder if the team are going to be able to do that over the coming matches and really go into the Champions League in a really good place. I just think this such an advantage not having European qualifiers. I know people look at the European part of that, and obviously that's the big thing, being straight into the Champions League, etc. But I think the knock-on effect on domestic stuff, this Celtic team, I always think when we've not got distractions of the midweek stuff, we can find our form. It's almost as if the team only have 90 minutes per week where they can shine, so all their efforts are focused on that. And I know we weren't brilliant today for the full game, but I just have, domestically, I have no worries at the moment, and that might age horrendously in a week's time, I don't know, but I just feel so secure domestically. I don't think many teams are going to touch us this season, and we go next week, Hibs, as you say, based on today at Celtic Park. You would think we would get through that. I think St Mirren might be a tough game after that, but you get through that and suddenly you're into a derby. So where are you, take the European stuff out of it, where are you domestically right now with Celtic? How do you feel about the season?
Yeah, I feel like inside me I feel like it's going to be dominant, but again, I just kind of qualify that as it becomes a long season, and you do get midweek matches and you do get matches after Europe, and that's the time when you need the strong squad to be able to cope with that, or you need viable options to come in at a similar level, not the same level or the same style of player even, but just at a level that can fight and win matches. And I think that's what I'm waiting to see. all signs point to us being dominant this season, and I'm excited about what I'm seeing on the pitch. I do just, we want that strong squad, as strong a squad as possible to be able to cope, because the matches are going to come thick and fast once we get into Europe, especially if we get through the League Cup rounds, etc. It is going to all start to ramp up, and Brendan Rodgers has spoken about his need for those options to kind of fight on all fronts, really. And you want Celtic to do excellently in every single competition they play in. Nothing can come at the expense of something else. That's just the way that Celtic works. It's always, it's been like that ever since I started supporting them. So, I'm very happy, but we need the squad to be able to cope with all these pressures that you've just mentioned coming our way.
Yeah. A few other things just before we go. I thought Paulo Bernardo looked lively when he came on. Small sample size, but I think he's going to have a really good season for us. I think he might be considerably better than he was last season. And he wasn't bad last season, but it was moments last season. I think he might find a bit of consistency this year. Lewis Palmer, what's the chat there? He wasn't in the match day squad. The chat was that he missed training on Friday. I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the chat that we're hearing. I don't think Rodgers has been asked about that by anyone at the stadium today. Maybe by the written press and not his broadcast interview, but his post-match press conference. We might hear from them, but he seemed to have picked up a knock of some sort. Yeah. So we'll just need to monitor.
So he's not away to Brighton or something like that.
I don't think so. And I'm hoping that Maeda coming back is big for us as well, because he's so effective for us, in multiple situations. So it's good that he's shaking off what looked like. Rodgers said that Maeda's knee, I think he clashed his knee in the Chelsea game.
Reece James.
And Rodgers said that he looked like he might have been out for a longer period than he has been. So I think when maybe escaped, he got away with one there. But Maeda's Maeda, he's a Terminator, isn't he? So he's going to come back no matter what his injury is. So it's good to see him back on the pitch.
And I can already imagine comments will have been coming in, and there'll be comments about Liam Scales, who did have a shaky match today. I think it's fair to say he had a couple of moments that probably stood out because we were so good early in the game, and he was the one who let one bounce over his head. There was one he gave the ball away and gave Hibs a bit of encouragement, I guess, in that early portion of the game. But I guess that's nothing we don't know about Liam Scales. We know that he's not the polished centre-back that we probably need to go forward, but equally he's a guy that I think can be relied on as a squad player, and that is what I feel his role should be going forward. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we sign a centre-back.
I mean, you do there's just like contrasting things there where you recognise that he's been a good squad player. I think he was really important for us at stages last season, actually, and maybe didn't get credit for how he pulled us through some of those matches last season when Carter Vickers was out injured, etc. It was Scales that really stood up. It wasn't Narozki, it wasn't Lagerbielka, it was Scales who kind of stood up. And I'm really grateful to him for that. But again, like you say, I think he's more of a squad option, and he sees more of the ball than anyone. If you look at it, he'll have more touches than anyone in the Celtic team today. And when someone's on the ball that much, you really need a player with more quality on the ball. If we can find that, it's so difficult to find a player who can defend, a player who can defend on the turn, a player who can deal, superbly with bouncing balls and all those sorts of battles, as well as having the quality to play excellently on the ball when you're given that pass by Carter Vickers, etc. It's a little bit too safe from one time. There was a good moment from Scales when he kind of he passed it out wide to, I think it was Greg Taylor on the left-hand side, and then Taylor played a beautiful ball in for Kyogo. If Scales can be a bit quicker with the ball like that and pick a really good pass out to the flank more consistently, I think people would start to come around to him a lot more, but it's just a little bit safe sometimes, and I do just think an upgrade in that position will be noticeable for me. And Scales will still play a role. I still think he'll play plenty of matches, even if we're bringing in another defender. So that's probably what we're wanting in that position.
Fabulous. Thanks again for your time, mate. Get on with your day, and I'll get off to my bed.
Perfect. Everyone.
Not a bad kick-off time for us today. We're still going for 9,000 subscribers. We're at 8812 at the moment. So if you're able to get us to 9,000, that would be much appreciated. I'll be back tomorrow to chat more about today's game.